People have watched the PowerPoint, and then everyone that's in attendance is going to be given the opportunity to sit down one-on-one with a volunteer who is going to screen them. And again, folks are going to be asked, if possible, to bring their documents with them so that we can make this screening a meaningful one. So let's go over the screening form itself so that we can get a better sense of what this is all about. We're going to ask for name, other name used, mailing address, and the reason for getting this biographical information is once we know when the application workshops are, when anyone that we identify as being potentially eligible at this first series of workshops is going to be invited to the application workshop. So that's the reason for getting a lot of this information. Family size and income, those are important because my office represents persons who are under 150% of the federal poverty guidelines. So one of the things I want to do with these workshops, and you are not going to be screening people out, you're just going to be getting information. I think there will be a limited number of folks that attend these workshops whose income is over our income guidelines. And so as a matter of limited resources, we are then going to tell those folks that we're not going to be able to assist them at the application workshops and suggest they see a private immigration attorney. So we're going to go on to want to know, do folks have any immigration papers? If they do, what are they? Chances are that most people that come won't have that. We're going to want to know what sort of photo ID they have, and they're going to be asked to bring the photo ID so we can ascertain whether or not they need one. Then the questions about residence. When did you first enter the United States? And have you lived in the United States since that date? And if they haven't, get the dates that they were absent. Were you in the United States on November 20th of 2014 when the president announced this? Then going down to children. As of November 20th, 2014, did you have a child that was born in the U.S., that had a green card? Then number 6, were you married to the child's other parent? Yes or no? So where that becomes important is under the immigration law, if a child is born out of marriage, out of wedlock, and the father of the child seeks to obtain some type of immigration benefit from them, the father has to show that before that child turned 21, they established a parent-child relationship with them, paid child support, was some sort of presence in the child's life. So what we want to do at this initial stage is, in that sort of situation, be able to advise if there's an absentee father, so to speak, what it is they need to do in order to make themselves eligible for that. Because the other thing about this, going down to number 7, we want to examine the child's birth certificate, make sure that the parent's name is spelled correctly, and make sure the parent's name is actually on the birth certificate. Because for children born out of marriage, a lot of times the father's name is not listed on the birth certificate. And it's already anticipated that a possible avenue of fraud here may be men paying women who do not have fathers listed on the child's birth certificate to file an amended birth certificate, and lo and behold, now I have a child, now I'm eligible for this. He's fine in terms of proving that he is the father. If they were not married, he's still going to have to prove a father-child relationship. So if they're all living together, that shouldn't be a problem. But if we're talking about an absentee father, then there's going to be an issue. if immigration uses the same definition of child that they normally use. And again, even for that, we're going to have to wait for further clarification. Well, my understanding is that under New York law, if you're trying to amend a birth certificate within 2 years of birth to add the father, I think you can go to the local health department, but if it's beyond 2 years, you have to apply to the state health department. So there definitely is a recourse. And usually all that's required is that the father fill out a form called an acknowledgement of paternity. I don't know if more is going to be required, specifically if all of a sudden we see a lot of parents filing amended birth certificates, but at this point, all that, to my understanding, is required is signing this, an acknowledgement of paternity. Yes? That would be some evidence, but if the father's not on, the father's name is going to have to be on the birth certificate. I think I can almost guarantee that they're not going to accept it, an application, unless they've got the birth certificate proving the father is the father. All right, then education. So this is down there in case we may have some folks coming into the workshops who are eligible for either DACA or expanded DACA. They don't have a child that's a citizen or permanent resident. So from them, we want to know, do they have a high school diploma or a GED? If they do not, we want to get the highest grade that they completed in school. The reason why that's important is it's my understanding that in order to get into a GED class, and enrollment in a GED class does qualify you for DACA, but in order to get into a GED class, you have to have at least an 8th grade education. That's the rule of thumb, Pat. So we want to know whether for someone that doesn't, is a GED class a possibility for them in terms of getting this benefit. All right, then we want to know if people have ever been stopped by the police, and if yes, try to get as much detail as possible. And if they've ever been stopped by immigration, and again, try to get as much detail as possible. Then going on to the reverse side of the screening form. Then the next thing that what you will be doing is you'll be doing document review. So if a person tells you on the first side of this page that they entered the U.S. before the magic date and that they have a child that qualifies them, then you're going to review their document, their photo ID, the birth certificate of the child, proof of residence in the United States that meet each of those 4 requirements. And then, as is probably going to be true with some folks, they're not going to have all of those documents. So then what you're going to do is try to brainstorm with them to try to help them figure out, did you ever go to a doctor? Did you ever go to any kind of an agency or an office? What records does your child have? Any sort of contact, did you ever pay rent? Any kind of contact the person might have had after coming to the United States that might make it possible for them to get a document showing that they were here. And then at the end of the workshop, what I'm going to do is once you've done that brainstorming with folks and sort of looked at what documents they've had, then what I would probably have you do is give each person a note saying, be like a checklist. You need an identity document. You need documents proving residence for, and then write in whatever the time period is. So then folks would be able to leave the workshop and basically have some homework to do, so to speak, that would help them hopefully get ready. And then if a person, number 12, is DACA eligible, then the screening under there for documents is what you would be doing. And then, so as I said, we're also going to be screening people to see if they're eligible for any other type of immigration benefit. So questions 13 through 18 are designed to capture that. Any other U.S. citizen or permanent resident relatives? Will someone harm you if you go back to your native country? That might raise an asylum case. Have you ever been a crime victim? In the United States, people that are victims of certain types of crimes can actually apply for immigration status for something called a U visa. If the person you're talking to is under the age of 21, did either their parents ever abuse, abandon, or neglect them? That might make it possible for the person to apply for something called special immigrant juvenile status that leads to a green card. Did the person who brought you to the U.S. force you to work or to have sex? There's something called a trafficking visa, a T visa, which a person might be eligible for. And sort of a catch-all question, has anyone ever filed any type of application for you with immigration? And if so, what that was. And then at the bottom of this, there's going to be, if they have a specific question that's not covered by this, that they wanted to ask an attorney, you can note that. There are probably going to be some attorneys besides myself at the workshops. I don't know how many, and depending upon the number of attorneys and the number of folks that actually show up at workshops, we may be able to give them some more definite answers before they leave. In other cases, we may have to rely on the information that you've captured on the screening form and get back to them at a later date about a specific question they might have had about their immigration history or their criminal history or any other kind of thing. Now, for folks that do not speak Spanish and that may not be able to do the actual screening form, if there are large numbers of folks that show up, there are probably going to be folks waiting online to speak to a screener. For folks that don't speak English, one of the things that you can be doing while folks are waiting is to ask them, can I look at your document? And then you can be doing basically the document screening while folks are waiting to be seen, and then you can basically indicate on a piece of paper, this is what you need. The person gives it to the screener knows, okay, I don't have to do the back part of the page, and then the applicant leaves again with something showing what it is that they need to get. So then basically at the end of the workshop, we're going to tell people that we'll be in touch. We're going to make it very clear to folks who are attorneys and who are not attorneys, and that anything that a non-attorney tells you is not legal advice, just to make very clear to folks and to protect them from any misunderstandings that may develop. But I think if we kind of do all of this by the letter of the law, so to speak, that I think that will reduce the chances that there'll be any misunderstandings. So any questions about any of that?